Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, feel free to jump in with any questions for my guest or myself and put a comment in the comment box, and I'll be checking from time to time. Today's guest is Yousuf Ahmed, sustainable food entrepreneur, founder of B-Sides, the Brooklyn upcycled snack brand, proving that sustainability can be fun, flavorful, and profitable. A former recording engineer turned Goldman Sachs advisor, he left Wall Street to transform overlooked ingredients into better snacks and a better food system. Let's bring in Yousuf. I am really excited to talk to you today, Yousuf. My mouth isn't working.
Hi, Dara. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's really a pleasure to have you here on the show. And I'm excited to talk about upcycle because this is all new to me. When I say that, um, or maybe new to the audience, what is upcycled? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so upcycling, the easiest way that I've found to describe it is with the question, do you ever wonder what they do with the leftover oats from making oat milk? Because basically, to make oat milk, all you do is put a bunch of oats in a blender with some water, blend it up, strain it out. The liquid gets sold. What happens to all the solids? Like you haven't really cooked them, you haven't done anything with them. Why, what do you do with them? And the answer is they typically get thrown out. And I wanted to figure out how can I capture those byproducts that are totally nutritious, totally edible, put them back into the consumer food system. That is upcycling in a nutshell.
Mm. I digress from what I usually ask at the beginning. Other than doing this show today, what else is on your plate to do?
Oh man, today, taxes. I got to close the books for last year, and then I got to do some planning for this year. I wish I had a more fun or exciting answer for you, but I have a bunch of investors who are kind of chomping at the bit to see, how we performed last year and, see what's kind of on the roadmap ahead.
I'm curious about the family table, and I always ask this question and talk to people about it. What was food like for you growing up? Was it an important factor? What was the family table like? What foods inspire you? What are your favorite foods? Go for it.
Food was central to our family. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a family of four. My parents were first generation immigrants. My mom was a huge cook, still is, and she, growing up in Georgia back in like the late '80s, early '90s, grocery stores didn't look like they do today, and my dad has he quite an affection for Indian food, and my mom was such a curious cook. So, a lot of families when if they would go out to dinner or if they would host, it would be kind of a roast chicken and potatoes and a salad. Or if they were going out, it would be to a place like Applebee's. My mom would do like lobster boils and crazy Indian dishes. I remember having purple potatoes for the first time when I was like 6 years old. I was like, what is a purple potato? And then, when we would go out, it would be to places like Korean barbecue. It wasn't, the Applebee's of the world.
Fabulous. That's
Totally.
fab.
Yeah.
And you weren't one of these picky eaters, were you?
Looking back, I was probably pickier than I should have been. I think every kid has a rebellious streak, and mine probably manifested more in food than it should have. But I was exposed to a lot more, than I bargained for, than certainly any of my school friends.
Well, let's talk a bit about your background because you're now into CPG, consumer product goods, but that isn't how you started. One of the first things were that you were a technician in the music business. You were a recording engineer.
Yeah, I had a unconventional career path to say the least. But kind of the through line in all of it was some form of entertainment or another. And what I mean by that is, as a kid growing up, I loved music and I wanted to go where all the musicians were. So that was a recording studio. My parents are quite practical and pragmatic, and my dad wanted me to be an engineer. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. So I said, okay, why don't I? I had a curiosity for finance. This is around the time that the financial crisis happened. And so I got a degree in finance and I went and worked at the recording studio in hopes of kind of merging those two things, which is exactly what I did. I worked at a studio for a couple of years and then I moved up to New York City in 2010 and I got a job as what's called a business manager. So I managed the personal and professional finances for a bunch of different Grammy Award winning artists, writers, producers based both in the US and abroad. And it's changed quite a bit in the last 15 years, but back then entertainment was a total black box. Nobody knew kind of how it operated. Shows like Entourage hadn't come out and shown people kind of a peek behind the curtain. So it was a great kind of foray into a sector that I loved, which was entertainment. Um, but the thing is, when you work in entertainment, you basically work investment banking hours for a fraction of investment banking pay. So, like a good millennial, I quit and traveled around the world and ran out of money. Came back to New York, got a job as a dog walker, went to business school, and basically moved over into private banking at Goldman Sachs. So, doing what I did in entertainment, but more on the investment side for the wealthiest of the wealthy people in America, where I was exposed to a bunch of different. I sat at the intersection of basically food and sustainability. Those were my client base.
Okay. What was your inspiration for upcycling?
Yeah, so when I worked at Goldman, this was around 2016, 2017. Things like sustainability and what's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance impact investing were kind of the hot topics at the time. And what I quickly learned was a lot of the sustainability claims were like what I call green stamping or greenwashing. They were putting sustainable claims on things, but not actually materially making like products that were fundamentally different. And so upcycling has a direct impact on food systems in a way where, if I said I want to come up with a way to reduce food waste, a lot of people think, okay, I got to come up with an app so people can use recipes to use up those odd bits and ends in, the refrigerator. The problem with that is like when you're changing consumer behavior, that is a very, very difficult road to plow. And so I thought if I go upstream and plug these holes in the supply chain, I can achieve both outcomes at once, right? Consumers get to have the food that they like, and I get to do the actual physical, tangible impact that I wasn't really seeing on my day-to-day, job.
Right. You were saying it was greenwashing, like Starbucks and things like that, that
Yeah.
what they do, sort of they make you believe they're doing good, but they're not.
Yeah, which pollutes, the whole sustainability kind of field for everybody.
Okay, so now we've come through your education, um, and you're looking, I think, weren't you looking at something recycling from beer and then sort of went to the oats?
Yeah, so that umbrella term upcycling, examples like the oat milk example I gave exist all throughout the consumer food system. You brought up beer, that's how I started. So breweries, they basically do the same thing as oat milk producers. They just do it with barley and they heat it, ferment it, etc. You think about all the cafes in your neighborhood. What do they do with all the leftover coffee grinds or all the juiceries? What do they do with the leftover press, right? So the way that I started was there are hundreds of thousands, I don't know, tens of thousands of microbreweries around the United States. I cold called a bunch of ones within walking distance to my apartment. I asked them what they did with the leftover grain. They said, "Yeah, we usually throw it out, but feel free to come by and play around with it." So that's what I did. That's how I initially broke into upcycling. It was literally collecting grain from this brewery, dehydrating it, milling it into flour, and recipe testing.
So, so you did all that because I didn't know at the beginning if you hired someone to help develop it, but you initially went in and saying, I'm doing this, I'm starting from scratch, I'm getting these items and proceeded. Um, the company started what 2021, but when did the product really hit the market?
So the product really hit the market in let's call it August of last year. So it took me, you know, 4 years of intense R&D and market research where it was literally me trying to figure out how to do all like build this supply chain, figure out where consumer
Wow.
interest would make the most sense, right? Like it's a long process. I made things way more difficult for myself than I should have, but ultimately it's quite a bit more rewarding to develop a product in a supply chain soup to nuts than it is, like, oh, I'll just hire this person or hire that person. And it again, it was much longer than it should have been, but I'm pretty happy with the end product that we've got now.
Let's talk about the product because the reality of it is everybody, it's B-sides. Enjoy B-sides.com. You can go purchase it there. You can find it on Instagram. Enjoy B-sides. Let's talk about crunch. Let's talk about puffs. The floor is yours.
Oh, okay. You want me to just go from the top.
Go from
So
there.
here, why don't I start this way? Dara, are you a snacker?
I'm definitely a snacker.
Yeah, what's your go-to snack of choice?
My latest one, because girls, we play canasta and they have snacks out, but they get the individual bags of the multi snacks like pretzels, Doritos, salty snacks. And I just, and like Cheetos and things like that, all in one package. I'm a
Yeah,
happy
that's
camper.
speaking to I wish I was at that canasta table. That is exactly how I snack. If you open up my pantry, it is Cheetos, Tostitos, Doritos, the whole Eatos family, right? Like I love those things. And for me, um, when developing my first product line, which is, as you mentioned, the Crunch Puff, it's basically a better for you take on Cheetos. Comes in three nostalgic flavors. So classic cheddar, a ranch that is based on the Doritos Cooler Ranch, and a jalapeno flavor that's kind of a love child between like a salt and vinegar and a spicy kind of jalapeno snack. And as a kid, I call it doom snacking. 3 o'clock hits and I go to the pantry and I just start eating everything that I possibly can. But what I came to realize is like you just end up snacking to no like a bottomless end, right? Like you'll eat a bag and you're like, I kind of want another bag. And you're not really getting any fulfillment out of that. So when I went to develop these products, the nice thing about working with upcycled ingredients is they are chock full of protein and fiber. So upcycled oats in particular, that is like a 60-40 blend of protein and fiber. And I thought, okay, what if we could make these snacks like it'll scratch the itch of I want a Cheeto, I want a Dorito, I want to feel like I'm, you know, being bad. But at the end of a bag or the end of two bags, you actually feel like fulfilled, right? Not just filled by having a 26-gram protein bar, from David. But like, I just want a little snack that'll tide me over. So that was kind of my North Star is like, how do I give enough protein that I'm not basically making a meal? How do I make a snack that feels like I got something out of it rather than just shame? And how do I make myself feel like I ate a Dorito? So those were kind of the Venn diagrams that I was trying to work with.
Yeah. The snack, I go down the aisles of the supermarket, wherever, and there are a million snacks and a million packages. And some are wasted. There's no value. But how do you make yourself stand out from all these other packages? And I think you went through a revolution of initial packaging and finding that didn't work. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you recently asked me when when did this product launch kind of officially? And I said August. In fact, it launched in January of last year. And but to your question, I launched it with I had no budget. I have no background in packaging design, right? So like I had a very simplistic uh, kind of packaging format in which it was high contrast black and white, one puff, the claims, and that was it. And the reason that I did that was I wanted to see, to your point, when you walk down an aisle, there's a lot of things trying to grab your attention. And I was trying to test, okay, what actually resonates with consumers? Is it the claims on the packaging? Is it the packaging itself? Is it a combination of the two? And when I launched, I was in basically zero retail doors. It was all online. And so when you're a consumer looking at a product online, you actually spend a little more time kind of one to one without getting bombarded by others. And I found out A, sustainability is not a category driver in snacks. B, people thought the packaging was like, fine, but would not stand up to kind of retail pressures. And three, you can put delicious on a packaging. The artwork itself has to evoke deliciousness, right? Like you can't just say it, it has to feel that way when you look at it visually. So all of that informed basically a rebrand and a packaging redesign that I launched in August. That the packaging that you see on the website, on kind of all the social media, it feels like the 80s and 90s when food was all about fun and not about function. And but like I'm delivering on all of these kind of better for you qualities that the modern consumer looks for. So bridging that nostalgic gap and evoking kind of the crunch and the flavor, that was the whole goal of the packaging.
The packaging's exciting, your advertising's exciting. Um, and I think you focused in on who you're marketing to as well in the products. The I get a kick out of your Instagram and your videos, and I think you tap into your recording engineer sort of background on these videos because the ASMR is outstanding. For those who
Good.
don't know what ASMR is, it's autonomous sensory meridian response because everything's girl in the subway and she opens the bag and you hear the crunch and you hear the bag open and it's really sensory stimulation that comes with this. And I think did that engineering background, that recording engineering sort of play to that?
I think so. Yes, I'm glad that you picked up on it. And the whole brand is kind of tongue in cheek rooted in my background in the music business. A B-side, which is what the company is called, is literally the songs that didn't make it onto the final album, not because they're not good songs, but because maybe they didn't fit the vibe, etc. That's exactly what I'm doing with ingredients. That's exactly what I'm trying to do on social media, right? Like just play to kind of a sensory overload. And also, how do you deliver flavor through, a cell phone? You can't. So I got to do all the other stuff, right? Got to be visual, auditory. Those are the two things that I have to work with. And so, yeah, absolutely. I tap on my recording engineering background.
No, I just sat there and I love the one with the girl in the subway, and then people
Yeah,
had to come over and have it. Um, and I think B-sides also, when we're talking about what can we do with byproducts, B-side, throwing them away. So
exactly.
wasn't that part of the name too? Yeah.
It was a homonym.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Dan Barber, I'm going back. Dan Barber of Stonehill. Stonehill?
Stone Barns, Blue
Stone
Hill at Stone
Barn.
Barns. Yeah.
Stone Barn up in New York. That early on was an inspiration to you as well. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Dan Barber is probably the single most important kind of character in this entire backstory. In 2014, Dan Barber, who's a chef, very much focused on sustainability in kind of all aspects, but a pioneer in upcycling. He held a series of dinners. It was a residency, so each night over 30 days a new chef would come in and they would do a tasting menu where they would highlight kind of offcuts. And one of the courses on one of those dinners that I went to was called spent grain bread. So it was a loaf of bread made with the leftover grains from brewing beer. The course was literally just this mini loaf, a pat of butter, that was it. And I remember thinking, like, A, I had never heard of this concept. B, the the course was amazing. And then C, I was thinking, like, this idea, it's so kind of circular and elegant and amazing. Like, this is going to be the next big thing. Well, that was in 2014. And fast forward to today, 2026, I would argue that the majority of your listeners, your audience, probably still have never heard of upcycling as a kind of bona fide, food movement. And back in 2014, I was so convinced that this was going to be the next thing that, I kept an eye out for it in grocery stores, in restaurants. I read a lot of food publications. It never really materialized, which is why when I left Goldman Sachs in 2021, and I knew I wanted to work in food and I knew I wanted to work in sustainability, that's where I wanted to plant my flag. I wanted to figure out, how do I make this a thing?
Well, you mentioned AI. Um, More and more, it's getting a foothold in all aspects of our lives. How did AI play in the development of this product in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, so, a lot of people, they'll use AI forever. I think AI is good at certain things and less good at other things. Just to give you a little kind of peek behind the curtain at how unglamorous being a CPG founder is. So when you manufacture a product, it gets made in a big production facility. They put all the puffs in bags, they pack those bags in boxes, they put those boxes on pallets. How do you figure out how many pallets can fit into the back of a trailer and how many bags should go in each box and how many boxes can you stack high on a pallet before you start getting things like crush weight? AI is really good at problem solving those kinds of things with me where I don't have an expertise in logistics, right? But I know generally the direction I need to go in. And so that's actually how I helped. It helped me solve a lot of these kind of mundane behind the scenes unit economic problems that otherwise will crush emerging founders.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Um, there's a lot to talk about, but I think people, if you like crunch, if you like puffs, definitely go to B-Sides, enjoy bsides.com, and you can order an assorted package of all three flavors or a flavor that you like and order it in. And isn't there's free shipping after so many cases?
Yeah, so I ship only single serve, so each bag is a one serving. If you order two cases, that's 24 single serves. It's a month supply is free shipping.
Well, you've not seen me at the canasta game and how many bags I go through. Um, there's so much. And I want to tell people go to the Instagram or go on Facebook, enjoy B-Sides. That's all you need to know. Just look at some of the videos. So creative. So, and the packaging's outstanding. I wish I had a package here to show you. Um, do you happen to have any?
Oh my God, I sent my toddler to school with my last bag. She loves them. And by the way, that was my kind of North Star for how to make the ingredient label clean enough is like, would I feel good giving this to my toddler? Like the answer is unequivocally yes.
Good, good. All right. Well, since you are a foodie, uh, though the term is a little overused, since you're passionate about food, so let's change that. Um, we've come to the final questions. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
It goes quick. It go out to eat more, enjoy it because it goes quick.
Time. And as you get older, it goes faster each
Oh
year,
my God,
that's
I
for
know.
sure. Mm. If you woke up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
Um, so I'm a runner. I wish I was a better runner, and I wish I could wake up with the talent of being able to run a marathon. I just don't think, that's going to be in the cards for me.
Okay, okay. Since you cook, and since your personal Instagram had um, videos on how to cook different dishes, like any other cook, you probably had a culinary fail. What was your epic culinary fail?
So I was making falafel one night, and I was making it using dried chickpeas, and you have to hydrate the dried chickpeas. I didn't hydrate them enough, and I was doing a shallow fry. So when I went to go kind of on the dismount, it sat properly in the pan. When I went to flip it, the falafel kind of fell apart everywhere, and I just had falafel crumb that I then had to strain, pat dry, and put over a salad. My wife still reminds me of how disastrous that was.
That was one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. What are two must in the refrigerator?
French butter for sure. There's a brand called I'm gonna murder this name, Beurre de Barat by Rodolphe de Manure. It is exceptional. You must have this in your refrigerator. You can probably find it at a specialty grocer near you. So that's number one. Number two is carbonated water. I am a fiend for just hyper carbonated water. And if it's not in the fridge, I will literally, like at my in-laws, it commonly is not. So I just commonly go to get it. It's a boring one, but you can actually cook with it, particularly if you like, frying stuff or batters, things like that. It also gives lift to cakes. It's a secret ingredient.
And some matzo balls.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Um, what didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
Hmm. Um, let's see. What's my favorite food? So when I give you the answer, you're gonna laugh because you're gonna think it's very lowbrow, but I'll explain. So my favorite food is nachos. And the reason that I love nachos so much are because you can actually use nachos as a canvas to play with temperature, texture, pickles, all sorts of different toppings. And you can take it into multiple cuisines. People just think of it as like, movie theater nachos. I've done chicken tikka masala nachos. I've done some Israeli kind of mix of like Middle Eastern shawarma nacho situation. Nachos, I think, are the most underrated food in American culture.
Well, I think we've covered everything. We've told everybody it's enjoy B-sides. If you want to get the crunch and the puffs, definitely check out the Instagram and the Facebook page and the website, which is enjoybsides.com. Check out the packaging because it is phenomenal. Check out the advertising. And you've definitely um, you've taken advantage of social media. I see your ads all over Facebook.
Hopefully you
So
like them.
I do. I do. I do. I want to thank you so much, Yosef. It's been a joy talking to you, and we could probably talk food forever. But as I said prior to the show, should you come through Baltimore, stop in for dinner. The freezer's always full.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Dara. This was a lot of fun.
All right, great. Thank you for joining us. And I have a couple of announcements. Okay, everyone. Next week's guest will be Kylie Parati, creator of Tried and True Recipes and Exploring Vegan, two food platforms known for original recipes, thoughtful storytelling, and her now famous upside down cake flips, a playful element of surprise that has captivated millions across TikTok and Instagram. If you need to reach me, you can reach me on Instagram at Dara Cooks, and on Facebook, you'll find the page, The Food Enthusiast. jmoreliving.com is the website, and under the food menu, you will find the Food Enthusiast videos from day one on up. So check them out. And we also take advantage of the bi-monthly food newsletter. You'll see a link there. All my shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. Feel free to go back into our archives and enjoy past shows. May your plates always, always be full.